Yeah, hi folks. Yes, I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Now, as per usual, Christmas is the time of year I do all the maintenance around our home. So over the next few weeks, I'll only be able to do videos on rainy days. Anyway, you may have noticed that our propaganda media loves to hate Elon Musk, but they never mention the real reason why. They prefer to come out with verbal diarrhea like the following.
It may be the end of Elon Musk's turbulent reign as head of Twitter after buying the company earlier this year. The tech billionaire conducted a poll asking if he should step down as CEO. The majority of users voting yes. Corazon Miller reports.
The results are in. Over 17.5 million votes cast. 57.5% want him gone.
The Twitter situation's been a train wreck.
Despite promises he'd abide by the poll, Musk remains in charge, and there are signs he's still tinkering with future policy changes.
Musk's biggest problem is a lot of times he speaks before he thinks.
But it could be more than just an ill-thought-out tweet.
I think he's looking for some way to get out of this quicksand.
It's been a turbulent ride since Elon Musk bought the company at the end of October. The tech billionaire launched his reign by cutting half of Twitter's global workforce.
Ideally, most of America is on it and talking.
Earlier this week, the self-professed bastion of free speech suspended multiple journalists from the platform, drawing this stern rebuke.
The move sets a dangerous precedent at a time when journalists all over the world are facing censorship.
He's also angered users by putting an end to the free promotion of other social media sites. The backlash is what led to the poll on Musk's future. And if he follows through, it could see his successor face the difficult task of damage control.
It either turns around and this is just a dark chapter, or does it become a MySpace AOL?
A popular choice for his replacement among the Twitterati, rapper Snoop Dogg, who launched a poll of his own, though it's unclear how serious he is. A rise in Tesla shares heralding investor optimism that this could see Musk refocus after a tough few years.
As Tesla's stock has plunged this year, it means that Elon Musk has also lost his crown as the world's richest man. He's devoting increasingly amounts of time to Twitter.
And while he may take a step back from the day-to-day running, as owner, he'll still retain ultimate control of the online giant. Corazon Miller, One News.
Now, this is the real reason why our propaganda media hates Musk. He has exposed how the scummy left cheated during the 2020 election, and this is just part of it.
Twitter corporate emails released this week by new owner Elon Musk show the FBI paid Twitter almost $3.5 million over the course of 2 years for suppressing tweets damaging to Joe Biden and the Democrats. Documents reveal how the FBI treated Twitter like a department of the Bureau, telling the social media giant which tweets and accounts to take action against. In one of the many emails, FBI agent Elvis Chan forwarded to Twitter staff this list of accounts to block. More than a dozen former FBI employees still work at Twitter, although Musk fired former FBI General Counsel James Baker, who became Twitter's counsel, for his possible role in information suppression. In the days and weeks before the 2020 presidential election, it appears Twitter employees followed orders from the FBI and the Biden campaign, specifically blocking stories and tweets about Hunter Biden's laptop, which was found to contain emails showing influence peddling by then Vice President Joe Biden and possible crimes by his son. Mark Meckler was the CEO at the social media platform Parler and is president of Convention of States Action.
When the media itself becomes an instrument of government, which it seems like it has been, we're seeing that now with the release of the Twitter files, that's very dangerous because the media is now controlling the narrative that the government wants it to control.
Republicans on Capitol Hill are understandably furious. House Republicans are already gearing up for a sweeping investigation of Twitter's relationship with the FBI. Incoming House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer.
Anyone that cares about free speech should be outraged. Whether you're a Republican or Democrat, this has to stop. This is going to be a top priority for the Republican majority in January.
Incoming House Intelligence Committee Chairman Mike Turner.
Who is it that's coordinating this? How can we cut off the money, prohibit this in the future? And we will use our subpoena power to track that down and make certain that this doesn't happen again.
And on the Republican House Judiciary Committee site, the simple tweet, does anyone still trust the FBI?
Absolutely not. And of course, our propaganda media also loves to hate Trump as well. They ran the following segment on the very same night.
Donald Trump should face criminal charges, say lawmakers investigating the US Capitol riots in Washington last year. Trump supporters stormed Congress in early January, interrupting Joe Biden's certification as president. 5 people died as a result of the violence.
Now that is simply not true.
They are lying, and we are not going to help them do it. What we will do instead is to try to tell you the truth. We've attempted to do that since the day this happened. We hated seeing vandalism at the U.S. Capitol a year and a half ago, and we said so at the time. But we did not think it was an insurrection because it was not an insurrection. It was not even close to an insurrection. Not a single person in the crowd that day was found to be carrying a firearm, some insurrection. In fact, the only person who wound up shot to death was a protester. She was a 36-year-old military veteran called Ashley Babbitt. Babbitt was just over 5 feet tall. She was unarmed. She posed no conceivable threat to anyone. But Capitol Hill police shot her in the neck and never explained why that was justified. Those are the facts of January 6th. But since the very first hours, they have been distorted beyond recognition, relentlessly. Culminating with last night. Last night, CBS Nightly News told its viewers that insurrectionists at the Capitol on January 6th, quote, caused the deaths of 5 police officers. That is a pure lie. There is nothing true about it, and they know that perfectly well. Here's reporter Bob Costa, who should be deeply ashamed to say something this dishonest.
Thursday's primetime hearing will take Americans back to January 6th, when an estimated 2,000 rioters breached the Capitol building, causing the deaths of 5 police officers.
It's hard to believe he said that. Rioters caused the deaths of 5 police officers. You just heard CBS News tell its viewers that. This must be the big lie theory. The more bewilderingly false a claim is, the more likely you will be to believe it. Apparently, that's what they're betting on. In fact, precisely 0 police officers were killed by rioters on January 6th. Not 5, none, not a single one. So how'd they get to 5? Well, CBS is counting the suicides of local police officers that took place after January 6th. In some cases, long after January 6th. Suicide, unfortunately, is pretty common among cops. Policing is a tough job, as we've noted. But in these specific cases, the one CBS is referring to, the chief of Washington, D.C.'s police department told the New York Times that actually he had no idea if his officers were driven to kill themselves by January 6th. CBS just made that up. The 5th death that CBS News is referring to is of Capitol Hill police officer Brian Sicknick. You will remember his name. Sicknick's body lay in state at the Capitol after the media told us he'd been beaten to death by Trump voters with a fire extinguisher. Here's what they told you.
Officer Sicknick died after being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher.
Sicknick died after being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher.
Officer Brian Sicknick died after being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher during the hours-long attack.
They beat a Capitol police officer to death with a fire extinguisher.
Officer Brian Sicknick died after being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher during the fight.
He died at the age of 42 after he was bludgeoned with a fire extinguisher.
Once again, that's not true. Everything you just heard was completely fabricated. The D.C. medical examiner performed an autopsy, and the autopsy report showed that Officer Brian Sicknick had not suffered any kind of blunt force trauma. He was not beaten to death. He died of a stroke in his office later. No one has been charged in Officer Sicknick's death because Officer Sicknick wasn't murdered. They are lying to you. That is provable. Not a single person you just saw has apologized for lying. Not a single one. And it's not just the news media. Here's Congressman Pete Aguilar of California claiming that officers lost their lives on January 6th.
These hearings will be a chance for the country to come together, to rally around the truth and unite around the rule of law. We owe it to the officers who lost their lives and the officers who were injured to tell that story and to ensure that this never happens again.
Let's rally around the truth, he says, as he lies to you. May those words burn your tongue, liar. But what did happen exactly on January 6th? What's the truth of that day? Well, that's still unknown. From the extensive video we have of January 6th, it's clear that some in the crowd, more than a few, were encouraging protesters to breach the Capitol, to commit felonies. We're not guessing at that. We've showed you the tape. We have pictures of their faces. In the case of a man called Ray Epps, we know his name, but they've never been charged. Ray Epps was standing in exactly the same place that a lot of people who went to jail were standing, but he wasn't charged. His name was taken off the FBI's most wanted list. Why is that? It doesn't make any sense at all. The January 6th committee will not explain that. After a year and millions of dollars and 1,000 interviews, they won't tell us. Nor will they tell us how many FBI agents and assets were in the crowd that day and what were they doing there.
Yeah, now Ted Cruz tried to get the assistant director of the FBI to answer that question, and he got stonewalled.
I want to turn to the FBI. How many FBI agents or confidential informants actively participated in the events of January 6th?
Sir, I'm sure you can appreciate that I can't go into the specifics of sources and methods.
Did any FBI agents or confidential informants actively participate in the events of January 6th? Yes or no?
Sir, I can't answer that.
Did any FBI agents or confidential informants commit crimes of violence on January 6th?
I can't answer that, sir.
Did any FBI agents or FBI informants actively encourage and incite crimes of violence on January 6th?
Sir, I can't answer that.
Ms. Sadburn, who is Ray Epps?
I'm aware of the individual, sir. I don't have the specific background to him.
Well, there are a lot of people who are understandably very concerned about Mr. Epps. On the night of January 5th, 2021, Epps wandered around the crowd that had gathered, and there's video out there of him chanting, "Tomorrow, we need to get into the Capitol, into the Capitol." This was strange behavior, so strange that the crowd began chanting, "Fed, Fed, 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 Fed."
Americans, they're terrorists. You are. Yes, you are. Guys, yes, you are. Guys, I'm not saying they've already given up their American rights. Yeah, so I'm going to put it out there. I'm probably going to go to jail for it. Okay? Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol. What? No! Peacefully. Fed, 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 Fed.
Ms. Sandburn, was Ray Epps a Fed?
Sir, I cannot answer that question.
The next day, on January 6th, Mr. Epps is seen whispering to a person, and 5 seconds later, 5 seconds after he's whispering to a person, that same person begins to forcibly tear down the barricades. Did Mr. Epps urge them to tear down the barricades?
Sir, similar to the other answers, I cannot answer that.
Shortly thereafter, the FBI put out a public post seeking information on individuals connected with violent crimes on January 6th. Among those individuals, in the bottom there, is Mr. Epps. The FBI publicly asked for information, offering cash rewards leading to information leading to the arrest. This was posted, and then, sometime later, magically, Mr. Epps disappeared from the public posting. According to public records, Mr. Epps has not been charged with anything. No one's explained why a person videoed urging people to go to the Capitol, a person whose conduct was so suspect the crowd believed he was a Fed, would magically disappear from the list of people the FBI was looking at, Ms. Sandburn, a lot of Americans are concerned.
Yeah, now given the FBI's involvement with Twitter, it seems highly likely they were involved in January 6 as well.
After a near 18-month probe, a cross-party congressional committee has recommended charges for Trump, including inciting or aiding an insurrection, obstruction of an official event, and conspiracy to defraud the United States. Trump denies any wrongdoing. We're live to our US correspondent Anna Burns-Francis shortly. First, her report.
A day many thought would never come.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, there are 9 ayes and 0 noes.
Donald Trump formally referred to the Department of Justice for potential prosecution.
If the faith is broken, so is our democracy. Donald Trump broke that faith. He lost the 2020 election and knew it.
It all started with this, the riot on January 6th last year.
Pull them this way!
The then president's attempts to overturn the election, the subject of an 18-month investigation.
No man who would behave that way at that moment in time can ever serve in any position of authority in our nation again.
10.
Now, the entire panel is made up of left-wing hacks. And Trump supporters Jim Jordan and Jim Banks were kicked off that panel. Yes, this whole charade is a nothing burger.
Well, again, I think not only is the Justice Department, Jonathan mentioned that this is not binding and, the Justice Department could reject it. My sense is the Justice Department will ignore it, which is what the Justice Department generally does when Congress grandstands in this fashion. I would just point out the last referral that they made was about incitement and incitement of the violence at the Capitol. The Justice Department has prosecuted upwards of 800 people in connection with the Capitol riot. Insurrection is a federal crime. They have not brought a single insurrection case against anybody who's been prosecuted. They have taken the position in the most serious cases that they brought in connection with seditious conspiracy that Trump was not an unindicted co-conspirator, and to the extent that the defendants who were charged tried to blame Trump in those cases, the Justice Department took the position that he was basically a pretext for things that these militia-type groups were planning to do anyway. So the Justice Department, in order to prosecute Trump at this point for inciting or aiding and abetting the incitement of the Capitol riot, they would have to completely unwind and reverse the position that they've taken for about 2 years on these cases. So, and the other thing about that is the committee knows that. And yet they haven't addressed it. They don't address it. In connection with Trump's speech, he took pains in the speech to say that, he wanted them to march peacefully. The fact that the committee doesn't broadcast that he said that doesn't make that go away. Yeah. So, again, this is a theatrical exercise more than, a real hearing process.
Jonathan.
Yes, folks, that whole committee thing was a theatrical dog and pony show designed to hinder Trump's election campaign. Anyway, folks, in respect to the Twitter files, I've posted a link to what Trump plans to do about it, along with other links as well.